Rain still hissed on the smoking wreck when James Carter, 38-year-old white American, stepped past the police tape. The burned truck sat like a blackened ribcage in the center of the lot, steam snaking upward into the gray morning. Sirens faded to a nervous hum as firefighters and investigators from FDNY and ATF moved in measured lines photographing flagging kneeling. Beside him, Maya Johnson, 32-year-old black American, breathed through the metallic tang in the air and forced her gaze to the ground. The ground always told the truth first. "Stay behind the line," an officer called, not unkindly. James said, "We're not here to touch anything, not even our hands or voices. We're here to make sure what happened gets documented correctly." Maya scanned the perimeter. The dirt near the blast was pocked with shallow craters and speckled with glittering flecks the rain hadn't chased away. She crouched, careful not to cross into the marked radius. Henrik Vogel, 36-year-old white German, the investor's aide turned reluctant field analyst, jogged over with a clear evidence bag in one gloved hand. "Found this wedged under the engine frame," he said, breath clouding in the damp. Inside the bag, a blistered circuit board clung to a sliver of metal. "Looks like a timer module. I'll hand it straight to ATF." Maya nodded. "I added softly to ask them to test for aluminum and iron oxide, and said to frame. If there's thermite, the pattern will say so." Henrik blinked at her, a quick spark of respect on it. A knot of people gathered at the barricade. Neighbors, construction workers from a nearby site. A few shouting faces. The cameras loved. Phones were already lifted. Someone yelled, "Your fancy green project set afire." Another voice, "You people don't live here." James felt the old heat climb up his spine, the one that whispered, "Defend yourself and lose anyway." He started forward, but Maya reached him first, stepping into the open with rain beating her hairline. "No shovel touches this ground until it's clean," she said, clear and steady. That was true yesterday. It is truer today. The chorus dipped. It wasn't applause, but it wasn't a riot either. The cameras leaned closer. Across the tape, a teenage boy lowered his phone and watched her with something like relief. A woman in a navy windbreaker threaded through the onlookers and flashed a press badge that had seen better days. "Zoe Park," she said, breath-quick eyes, brighter than the sky. She was a 25-year-old Asian-American freelance reporter who had made a career by standing where the powerful said she shouldn't. "I've been getting messages from an anonymous source for weeks. 5 minutes ago they sent me something you'll want to see." "Walk with us," James said. They ducked under a dripping scaffold. Zoe held her phone so only they could see. Grainy footage filled the screen the lot at 2:07 a.m. Rain like static. A truck rolled into frame and stopped by the long puddle near the chain-link fence. 30 seconds. A figure slid out of the driver's seat. Cap-low jacket dark, moving with deliberate economy. The timestamp clicked toward 2:12. The figure walked away, shoulders slightly asymmetric, one hung lower than the other, and disappeared into the shadow of a lamppost. At 2:16, the truck's undercarriage flashed white, then bloomed into a hungry orange crown. Zoe swallowed. "There's more, but the file's corrupt." "I can try to recover it," James said forward. "What you have to the case detective and Henrik. And to me." His jaw set. "We'll get you protection if the source keeps sending you live material." Zoe said, "I don't spook that easily." But her fingers trembled as she shared the clip. Maya replayed the few clear seconds. The slant of the shoulders tugged at her memory. She closed her eyes, seeing another hallway, another day, a man with a careful step, a stiff jacket, a gaze that avoided every security camera until it didn't. Evan Reed, 30-year-old white American James's assistant, had flipped, confessed, and tried to make it right. "It looks like Evan," James said low. Maya didn't answer. Looks can be planted, she said instead. Gait can be mimicked and/or forced. Rain thickened pinpricks turning to beads. A cold gust cut under James's suit jacket. He shrugged it off without thinking and draped it over Maya's shoulders. The navy fabric hung heavy and warm, smelling faintly of cedar, and the rooftop lavender he wore, like a talisman of a world that still made sense. Her eyes flicked up surprise, almost breaking through the disciplined calm she wore like armor. "Thank you," she said. "You're shaking." "I'm angry," she corrected, and a corner of her mouth lifted. Anger shivers when it has nowhere to go. Then we give it direction. Across the lot, ATF raised a yellow shield and crouched near the engine block. Henrik stood with them, gesturing at the circuit board, translating the tech into the language of risk and method. An investigator turned, nodded at Henrik, and Maya felt a slight shift. A door opening not broad, but enough for air. "Ms. Johnson," a uniformed officer called from the barricade. "We'll need a statement about your chain of custody procedures for those soil samples from yesterday." Maya's shoulders squared. "You'll have the photos, duplicate jars, signed transfer forms, and timestamps written in pen and metadata." The officer gave a hitch of a smile. "Good." Zoe's phone buzzed again. She flinched and lifted it. The anonymous number. "Do not trust your assistant." Then a second message. "Check the shoulder." Attached was a still frame pulled from a different angle street cam, wider lens. The figure's head was turned cap brim, slicing across the top of a cheek. The left shoulder sloped lower by a few degrees. The fabric wrinkled, like it had been tailored for another body. Maya looked at James. "He was coached to look like Evan," she said softly. "Or outfitted." "Or it's him," James said. He sounded like he hated the possibility even as he named it. "Fear buys people." "And guilt," Maya said. "But so does a threat." A shout rose from the crowd. A man with rain-slick hair jabbed a finger toward the scorched ground. "You talk pretty, but fire is fire. You think your garden can fix this?" "The garden won't," Maya said. "The plan will, and you will see every line before we touch a single tree." The man's mouth worked. He lowered his hand. The boy beside him, maybe his son, looked at Maya like he'd found a handhold. Henrik returned water dripping off his brow. "ATF thinks the timer was slave to a simple relay," he said. "We'll know more once the lab is done." They flag metallic residue, consistent with a thermite mix. But it is not enough to be conclusive. Someone wanted heat without a crater. "Spectacle, not massacre," James murmured. "They wanted the headline, not the casualties." "And they got it," Zoe said for the moment. Maya stared past them at the soil beyond the blast ring. The top half-inch had turned to mud. Beneath the darker silt waited indifferent to flame. She remembered the teaspoons of benzene the lab had whispered into the phone, the volatile ghosts under children's sneakers. Her anger steadied into purpose. "Zoe," she said, "if your source sends anything that shows the approach route, I want the curb lines. Tire splash patterns, puddle disruptions. Rain remembers footsteps longer than concrete does." Zoe's eyebrows shot up. "You talk to dirt like it talks back." "It does," Maya said. "You have to want to hear it." A final spray from the hose sent steam curling. The truck settled into itself, a gutted thing. The officer who had asked for Maya's paperwork returned with a clipboard. "We'll set up a time this afternoon," he said. "And Ms. Johnson, thank you for not hiding." "Someone tried hiding a city," Maya said. "We're done with that." They started back toward the street. James slipped his jacket tighter around her. The wind shifted. For a heartbeat, the scent of scorched rubber gave way to a memory of crushed lavender, clean and stubborn. Zoe's phone chimed again. She stopped, dead color draining. The rest of the file just restored. she whispered. There's a frame from before the driver gets out. The camera caught the passenger side mirror. It reflects. What James asked. A face, Zoe said. Blurry, but the jawline. It could be Evan. Or someone wearing Evan's face. She turned the screen. The reflection was a smear of rain and light, but the shape was unmistakable in its suggestion. James exhaled a sound somewhere between fury and hurt. Maya felt the ground tilt, then lock back into place beneath her boots. She said we find the hand that said it, whether it's him or a mask. Her phone buzzed another anonymous text, same number, that had sent the soil map days ago. The fire is noise. The ground is the message. Look at the valve. A pin dropped onto a rooftop diagram, their rooftop, right over the irrigation manifold. James read it over her shoulder. They're daring us. No, Maya said. They're telling us where to listen next. Behind them, cameras snapped. Ahead, the city opened its 1,000 unreliable doors. Between the smoke and the rain, James and Maya moved together toward the only thing that had ever saved them the work. And on Zoe's screen, frozen in a rectangle of gray and static, the slanted shoulder of a stranger carried the shape of a man they had once trusted. They watched the clip thrice in the back of the van, the rain ticking on the roof like a metronome. On Zoe's screen, the figure's left shoulder sloped slightly lower, the jacket bunching in a snug, unnatural crease. Henrik froze the frame and drew a line from collar to elbow. Evan doesn't carry like that, Maya said. He favors the right when he's stressed, and his left scapula doesn't wing. You noticed his shoulder blades? Zoe asked. I notice what moves, Maya said. So does soil. Henrik tapped keys. I can run a quick gait comparison against Evan's security footage in the building. It won't be courtroom grade without a biomechanics consult, but it'll tell us if we're chasing a look-alike. Do it, James said, already dialing. Evan's phone rang into a bland voicemail. He tried again, then texted, Call me. You are in danger. The message delivered. It did not turn blue. Within the hour, they were at Evan's apartment. The super shrugged at the door. Haven't seen him since last night. Elevator logs show his key fob left at 11:03 p.m. Henrik checked the building console and frowned. And it also left at 1:26 a.m. from the freight elevator's same card ID. Cloned, James muttered. They pulled footage. The 11:03 departure was unmistakably Evan Pale, under the lobby lights, shoulders squared in determination or fear. The 1:26 figure wore a ball cap and kept his face down. The height and build could fool someone in a hurry, but the cadence of the steps had a mechanical pause on the left, a limp masquerading as a habit. Plate readers, Maya asked. Henrik was already on it. The garage camera caught a van swapping plates behind a pillar. The plate it left with belongs to a bakery in Queens that filed a theft report this morning. So we have a fake fob and a borrowed identity, James said. Spectacle on top of spectacle. Zoe lifted her phone. My source just sent coordinates near the lot. Says, ask the woman with the stroller. They found Tasha on the sidewalk outside the schoolyard stroller, now replaced by a plastic bag of groceries, and a wariness earned the hard way. Maya introduced herself again and explained the clip, the car, and the questions that wouldn't stop. You want to know where the cars idle before they do stupid things, Tasha said, rain beating on her lashes. She pointed with her chin to a corner where the chain-link fence sagged. After storms, the puddle over there goes black. Smells like someone wrung a tire. They rounded the fence. The lot's far corner collected the rain like a basin, a skin of oily rainbows wobbling on top. Maya squatted and traced the water line with a gloved finger. The soil beneath was slick, heavy wrong. She probed gently with a thin stainless probe, then levered up a dented circle of metal lodged under the surface. It came free with a wet kiss, a paint can lid stamped with a logo that looked like a stylized delta over crossed wrenches. Delta Core Environmental. Henrik read, crouching beside her. They've done subcontracting on municipal cleanups. Or cover-ups, Zoe muttered. Maya turned the lid. The lip was fresh scraped. This rode in a truck bed. It didn't sit here long, and whoever brought it knew we'd read it. Planted, James said. Maybe. On the other hand, trying to talk, Maya said. She slid the lid into an evidence bag and wrote date, time, GPS, and initials, her printing small and steady. You keep those bags with you? Zoe asked. Maya nodded, seeds in more than one jar. They walked Tasha home under a deeper curtain of rain. Outside her building, Tasha paused. You're the first ones to come back after headlines, she said. Please don't leave us when the cameras do. We won't, James said. He meant it, and the admission startled him with its clarity. On the way back, the storm turned horizontal. They ducked under the awning of a shuttered bodega. The city smeared into soft gray, beyond the plastic sheeting blinking in neon and brake lights. Why do you hate crowds? Maya asked without looking at him. I don't hate them, James said after a beat. I hate what I become inside them, loud to be heard louder, to drown out the part of me that knows I'm wrong to be noisy. You don't have to be loud to be heard, she said. That works for people who listen, he said. You taught me to talk to the ones that don't. Her smile was small and genuine. A rare thing he didn't want to shatter. A gust blew rain under the awning. He shrugged out of his jacket again and set it around her shoulders without ceremony. Don't make a habit of catching me, she said. I already have, he answered, softer than he intended. A black sedan crept by windows tinted past legal. It eased to the curb and idled. The passenger window slid down an inch. A gloved hand flicked something outward. The object landed with a clap in a shallow puddle at their feet. Zoe scooped it, shook off water, and hissed a curse. A glossy 8x10 showed James and Maya crossing the rooftop at dusk, close enough to look intimate if you didn't know what urgency looks like. Across the photo, a red grease pencil screamed, "Prop lover" in block letters. Originality is not their strong suit, James said, jaw tight. Maya's eyes stayed on the reflection caught in the photo's glass, just enough to capture a sliver of skyline that shouldn't be there if the shot came from a hotel terrace. This was taken from a drone, she said. Probably one of those quiet ones. The angle's too high for the adjacent roof. So, they're watching from the sky and the ground, Zoe said, scanning the block. The sedan pulled away, with the smug indifference of a cat leaving a broken glass behind. James's phone buzzed. Henrik gate check. Suggests a mismatch with 83% confidence. The shoulder slope is manufactured padding, maybe a brace. So, a masquerade, James texted. And another thing, Henrik replied. You need to come back. You both do. They were halfway to the corner when Henrik called. He said, I've been on with the U.S. Attorney's Office without preamble. Someone pushed them the forged email story and the Zurich login in one packet. They want James to do a voluntary interview tomorrow at 9. They also invite Maya to speak as a technical witness about the chain of custody and the rooftop system. Zoe blew out a breath. Spectacle meets subpoena. James said that voluntary interviews are never voluntary. Then we bring our own lights, Maya said. We get the jars, the logs, and the video of the valve bypass. We don't let them write the scene alone. Henrik hesitated. There's more. I ran Delta Core through procurement. They have invoices paid by a shell that resembles the one behind the fake "no further action" letter years ago. It's thin without bank records, but the pattern smells the same. Delta Core moves dirt, Maya said, thinking aloud. If you wanted to launder soil, you'd need a hauler, a stamp, and a story. They have 2. We're ripping up the 3rd. They reached the corner and waited for the light. Maya studied the flow of rain along the curb. A wide tire had cut through 30 minutes ago, displacing gravel and leaving a clean V in the grit. She tracked the line with her eye to the alley behind the lot. Whoever drove that truck knew this block, she said. They used the alley to hide plate changes. We can sweep it now, Zoe offered. Maya said that it would not happen without contaminating what's left. Tomorrow, with the detectives. Tomorrow, James echoed, tasting the word like a dare. Tomorrow meant federal questions and the thin line between transparency and a trap. Tomorrow meant walking back into a room designed to make honest people doubt themselves. The walk sign flashed. They crossed shoes splashing through new puddles, the city's lights printing restless gold on the water. Behind them, the black sedan turned again at the far end of the block, not following, just reminding. After the interview, James said, "We'll go to the roof. Whoever texted about the valve wants us to find something there, or wants us to be on camera when we do," Maya said. "Either way, we check. But we check with our own camera rolling first." They reached the van. Henrik was already on speaker with legal lining up counsel and building a scaffold under the ground, and they were about to walk. Zoe's thumbs flew over her phone as she filed just enough to keep the wolves fed, without giving away the scent of the real hunt. "Tomorrow at 9, Henrik repeated. "Downtown. Bring everything that proves you're not the story they are." Maya placed the evidence bag on the dashboard with the paint lid and taped the chain of custody form. The ink held dark and legible in the van's interior light. James looked at her hand, its steadiness, the way it didn't shake, until the anger had somewhere to go. "Get some rest," he said. Maya said that rest is what you do when the soil's sleeping. Tonight, it's speaking. He didn't argue. Outside, the rain softened to a stubborn mist. The city, unpersuaded by disaster, kept moving. Inside the van, they drew the lines for tomorrow, and the room that would try to redraw them. In the alley, they would walk at first light, but the water kept its shallow V, waiting for someone to listen. The interview room was the color of rain. Fluorescent lights hummed above a rectangular table, and a pitcher of water was sweating onto a coaster nobody touched. A placard on the wall read, "Recording in progress." James folded his hands and set a thin stack of documents beside his elbow. Chain of custody forms, courier receipts, time-stamped photos of stairwells and sealed jars. Maya sat to his left, her copy of the same stack, aligned as if a straight edge had drawn it. An assistant U.S. attorney entered with 2 agents. She was brisk without being cruel. "Thank you for coming in voluntarily," she said, which everyone in the room understood as, "Before we made you." "Mr. Carter, we will ask you about the Zurich login and the email. Ms. Johnson, we'll ask you about sampling custody and the rooftop irrigation system." James nodded once. Maya mirrored him. The AUSA clicked a pen. "Mr. Carter, do you have your phone and laptop with you?" "I do," he said. "And counsel lists what you're entitled to and what is privileged. We're not here to hide. We're here to explain." "Good," she said, not smiling. "Then explain the login at 18:03 Eastern, originating from Zurich, used to authorize a transfer you claim you didn't make." James slid a printout forward device, fingerprint mismatch. "My phone's geolocation placed me in our stairwell with Ms. Johnson and a courier at that minute. The building clock appears in frame. Metadata attached. The AUSA reviewed expression unreadable. We'll corroborate." An agent turned to Maya. "Ms. Johnson, you say you collected soil samples from 6 points and preserved duplicates. Describe your custody procedures." "Pre-labeled jars with QR codes," Maya said. "Photos at each coordinate. GPS logged signatures in ink and digital. Coolers are locked with numbered seals, documented at transfer and receipt. Any breaks in the chain? One attempted switch in the lobby, she said. We caught it. The condensation pattern was wrong for the ice pack age. Security footage supports. The agent's eyebrows lifted briefly. Human. You noticed condensation. I notice what moves, she said, even when it's water. James almost smiled. The AUSA did not. She slid a new photo across the table, the drone shot of them crossing the rooftop, the red scrawl, prop lover slashed across it like a wound. What was this meeting about? Valves and truth? Maya said. Not romance. Do you deny a personal relationship? Deny the relevance. Maya said. You asked how the irrigation works. It works with redundant bypasses, so a single shutoff can't fake failure. The AUSA held her gaze, then moved on. Mr. Carter, the Zurich activity, mirrors a pattern we've seen in other corporate sabotage cases. If it is sabotage, it's sophisticated. If it isn't, she didn't finish. It is, James said even, and it is connected to people with federal contracts. The room thinned for a heartbeat, the way air thins before thunder. That's an allegation, the AUSA said. Bring proof, not weather. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. The guard at the door glanced up. She ignored it. It buzzed again, a rhythm that matched the one anonymous number she'd come to respect and fear in equal measure. When the questions paused for counsel to confer, she checked discreetly. Meet me. 30 minutes. Old City Hall Station. Track level. Come alone. Bring a recorder. A map pinged into place. She lifted her eyes and found James already studying her. He didn't ask. He didn't have to. He tilted his head a millimeter. Go. She wrote on the margin of a legal pad. Anonymous source. Old City Hall. 30 mins. And slid it under her stack. He read it upside down and gave the slightest nod. When the AUSA broke for a 10-minute recess, Maya stood. Restroom, she said. Nobody argued. She walked out steadily, turned left, and kept walking. Old City Hall Station slept beneath the city like a secret no one dared to keep. Stained glass skylights, tiles in a perfect curve, chandeliers dark as unstruck matches. She hopped the short barrier by a maintenance door and dropped to track-level boots, landing on gravel with a low crunch. Her flashlight cut a tight cone through the air that smelled like dust and copper. Ms. Johnson. The voice came from a shadow near a tiled arch. A man stepped into the edge of light shoulders, hunched eyes swollen with a lack of sleep that ran deeper than last night. He held a small hard drive in both hands like a passport. I can't stay. They're watching. But I can't carry this anymore. Who are you? Maya asked. No names, he said. I was asked to sign a no further action letter. Years ago. The test results didn't match the stamp. They called it an administrative correction. We called it laundering. His laugh was a flinch. We called it that in private. I mean, not on paper. Delta Corps, she asked. Sometimes. Sometimes a shell that paid Delta Corps. Sometimes another shell. He pushed the drive into her hands. Everything I could copy before they rotated the credentials. Ledger files, payment trails, internal memos. Look for anything tagged black. Why me, she asked. Because you keep receipts, he said. Because you said you won't build on poison. And because they'll make him the villain if you fail. He didn't have to say James's name. Footsteps faint as a rumor whispered from the far tunnel. The man's head snapped toward the sound. Go, he said. Your light will draw them. Maya killed the beam and moved along the curve, hand on the cool tile, counting breaths. The footsteps grew, then hesitated, then quickened. A metal click shoe on track plate. She slid between two columns and pressed herself flat, letting shadow take her. A cap brim cut the corner of the arch, then a shoulder, then a body, moving with too high intent. The same asymmetric drag on the left she'd seen in the video. She exhaled quietly through her nose and let the figure pass. A second set of steps, heavier, slower, purposeful. She didn't wait to meet the owner. She took the opposite curve boots, finding the ballast without sound, and climbed a ladder to a maintenance hatch. The latch stuck. She leaned, teeth-gritted muscles remembering the manifold handle that wouldn't give. The hatch popped with a cough of dust. She emerged into a service corridor that tasted like old paper. A door at the end opened onto a stairwell. She took the stairs two at a time, surfaced into a hallway, and almost collided with James. "I knew you'd take the maintenance route," he said, breath running behind his words. "You always do." She held up the drive. "He gave us this." His eyes flicked to it, then to her face, then back down the hall. "We can't open it here. Too exposed." They slipped through a service exit into a crush of umbrellas and steam. The city swallowed them like it always did. Indifferent, generous, dangerous. They didn't talk until the van doors shut. Henrik stared at the drive as if it might detonate. "Air-gapped," he said, already pulling a laptop with no radios from a padded sleeve. "Read-only mount first. If there's a booby trap, I'd rather it chew the sacrificial goat." Zoe slid into the seat behind them, rain on her lashes again. "What is it?" James said. "Maybe the thing that turns allegations into proof." And for the first time that morning, his voice carried a current under the surface, anger harnessed to hope. Henrik mounted the drive. A directory bloomed on the screen. Prescott Consulting Contractor Gateway Invoices Q4, NFA Kits #locker backups. He opened NFA Kits. Inside, thumbnails of scanned letters were stacked like a tile floor. He clicked one at random. The watermark sat too softly. The notary stamp's time was 2:13 a.m. "Wrong seal placement," Maya said. "Wrong hour." "Who notarizes at 2:13 in the morning?" "People who prefer darkness," Zoe said. Henrik backed out and opened #locker. A password prompt appeared, then a note beneath it, in a programmer's plain sarcasm. "If you're reading this, you're already late. Try Ledger Black." He typed Ledger Black with a capital L and B. The prompt blinked. The folder opened. Inside lay a single file, ledgerblack.pdf. The van seemed to hold its breath. Outside, a siren threaded the block and passed on. Henrik hovered his cursor over the file name. "You're sure?" he asked, eyes on James. "No," James said, honest. "But open it." Henrik double-clicked. The screen went white, and then filled with columns, the map of a machine they had felt but never seen, account numbers, dates, disbursements. On top of that, a payment from Amaranth Urban Holdings to Prescott Consulting was made on the same day as a forged clearance letter. Next, a transfer from Prescott to a vendor whose name sat like a warning, Arcturus Risk and Security. Zoe's hand went to her mouth. Maya leaned in until her breath fogged a corner of the screen. "Scroll," she said, voice. "A wire." Henrik scrolled. Halfway down, a note column opened into initials and calendar codes. One entry sparkled like a shard of glass under a work light. LP Prep Hearing. A line story, 0930. James didn't speak. He didn't need to. The drive had started to hum faintly, a vibration too soft to read, as danger too present to ignore. "Copy it," Maya said. "Everything. Twice." Henrik's fingers flew to two encrypted sticks and the offline vault, and printed in PDF to freeze it as is. The printer in the back of the van warmed like a sleeping animal waking. Outside, rain finally thinned to a fine mist, which lingers because it refuses to decide what it is. On the laptop, a gray bar crawled across the bottom of the window. Exporting 1 of 1. Please don't die on me now, Henrik whispered to the machine. The bar inched forward, stubborn as anything worth keeping. When it hit 99%, the folder flickered. For a heartbeat, the file name stuttered to ledger Beal and back. The printer spat a first page into the tray, but the black ink was still wet. Maya caught it before it slid to the floor. The top line stared up at her like a verdict. She looked at James. "We have a ledger," she said. "Now we find the hands." The laptop chimed softly. Export complete. And somewhere deep in the drive, something clicked like a small lock, deciding whether to open or to break. The van was parked under a dripping overpass hidden from passing traffic by shadows, and the steady roar of rainwater rushing through gutters. Henrik printed page after page, the old inkjet grinding like a tired heart. Each sheet slid into Maya's waiting hands, and she stacked them carefully, tapping the edges against her knee until the pile was square. The ledger, black.pdf, was no longer a theory. It was ink. Numbers bled into names and names into dates. The machine of sabotage had a skeleton now. James leaned over the stack. His jaw flexed as he traced one line with a finger. Amaranth Urban Holdings, Prescott Consulting, Arcturus Risk and Security. The sum was 7 figures routed the week before the forged email scandal hit the news. "They've been financing the attacks," he said. "Arcturus runs the sabotage. Prescott launders it. Amaranth pays them both." Maya flipped to another page. "And the ledger doesn't just show our project. Look, Parcel 18A, Parcel 22C, Parcel 37F. These are scattered across the boroughs. Some are already developed." Zoe snapped photos with her phone. "If this gets out, it's not just a business scandal. It's systemic fraud, whole neighborhoods built on poison." Henrik shut the laptop with a decisive click. "We have to move." The drive is humming like a live wire. It could be a kill switch or my nerves, but we shouldn't linger either way. The hum stopped when the laptop powered down, but silence did not mean safety. They relocated to the rooftop, their sanctuary and battlefield. The lavender bowed under drizzle, the scent sharp against the damp air. James paced by the manifold, the spot the anonymous text had flagged. Maya crouched, flashlight angled against the valve housing. A faint gouge marred the edge, fresh like the one they had seen before. "Someone tried to stage another failure," she murmured. "But this time they left no dust." "Maybe because they didn't want proof," James said. "They wanted suspicion." The city glimmered through glass towers around them, restless, hungry. Zoe balanced her phone on the parapet, streaming notes into a secure cloud. "If we go public with this ledger tonight, we control the narrative, or we bury ourselves under it," James said. His voice was clipped sharp with the edge of exhaustion. "They'll call it doctored if it's leaked before we can verify. We'll look desperate." Maya stood. "And if we sit on it, they'll set another fire stage, another photo forge, another email. Every delay is a door for them." For a moment, their eyes locked. Strategy versus instinct, survival versus exposure. The rain picked up, drumming against glass and soil. Finally, James looked away, palms flat on the cool steel of the valve box. "I've already lost once by moving too fast," he said quietly. "I won't lose again the same way." Maya's words landed like stones. "Then you'd rather protect yourself than fight for the truth." The silence that followed cut deeper than any argument. Hours later, the war room buzzed again. Henrik had spread copies of the ledger across the table like battlefield maps. Red circles marked every link between Amaranth, Prescott, and Arcturus. The pattern was too clean to dismiss, too dangerous to hold. Here, Henrik said, tapping one column. Cross-reference this invoice date with city contracts. Prescott billed Amaranth on the same day a government contractor filed for remediation work. It's synchronized. James rubbed his temples. If we accuse a contractor with federal ties, we'll be labeled conspiracy theorists unless we have airtight proof. Zoe scrolled through her messages. My source insists there's more. They hinted at a contractor gateway folder tying the ledger to federal invoicing. If we can extract that. James said that the risk of digging deeper is losing what we already have. The risk of not digging is letting them bury us, Maya countered. She leaned over the table palms, pressing against the ledger pages. Every hour we hesitate, they gain ground. The old tension sparked between them again, but this time, Henrik cut in. We need to assume they know we have the drive. If it's humming, they can track it. They'll move faster now. James's phone buzzed with a new message as if to prove him right. No name, no number, just a line of text. You think the ledger saves you. Tomorrow it damns you. Attached was a photo of Lauren Prescott standing beside Richard Ellison with a glass in hand. Behind them, a conference room projector displayed a slide crisis response playbook. James swore under his breath. They're already spinning this. They'll leak a counterfeit version of the ledger, Maya said. Make it look like we fabricated evidence. Zoe's voice was low, urgent. Then we have to strike first. Publish side by side the ledger, the metadata, the checksum from the untouched archive. We drown them in receipts. Receipts don't stop headlines, James said. No, Maya replied. But they plant roots, and roots don't break in storms. They anchor. The words hung in the war room like an oath. Outside, thunder rolled over the river, heavy as truth, waiting to be told. At dawn, Maya climbed back onto the rooftop alone. The lavender glistened, each stalk jeweled with dew. She crouched by the soil bed, fingers sinking into damp earth. The dirt clung steady, indifferent to noise. She heard her grandmother's voice. The soil doesn't care who you are. It only cares if you nurture it. A shadow fell across her shoulder. James. He carried 2 coffees, eyes shadowed from sleepless hours. I was wrong, he said. His voice was rough, stripped of armor. Silence could be a strategy, but silence is precisely how they win. Maya met his gaze. His vulnerability was as rare as sunlight through a storm. She took the coffee, their hands brushing in the exchange. Then we fight louder, she said with roots and receipts. He almost smiled. Almost. Together. Together, she said. The lavender swayed as if in agreement, the city below still restless, poisoned, still waiting. And in the quiet between thunderclaps, they both knew the next strike would come fast. And this time, they would not run. The warehouse on Canal Street had once stored coffee beans. Now, it stores secrets. Henrik had convinced a nervous clerk to grant them midnight access to a server rack hidden behind a wall of unused filing cabinets. The rack thrummed faintly, fans spinning slowly in the humid air. On one corner, taped in warning orange, was a handwritten note. Do not shut down without admin code. Which means exactly what we're about to do, Henrik muttered. He plugged the salvaged drive into a read-only cradle and connected it to the rack's console. The monitor blinked to lifelines of code, cascading until they settled into a login prompt. The cursor blinked, patient, unhurried. Ledger black, opened with a joke password, James said. Try the same logic. Henrik typed, contractor gateway. The prompt shook its head and read. He tried soil laundry, then Prescott 1. Nothing. The cursor blinked faster as if growing impatient. Let me. Maya stepped forward. She typed, roots, before lies. The screen accepted. For a heartbeat, relief bloomed. Then the alarms they couldn't hear, but could feel began ticking in code. A new window appeared crimson against black system purge initiated. 0500. The timer began to count down. Back up it all now, James barked. His voice carried the same command he used to turn boardrooms. Henrik's hands flew across the keyboard. Trying the fan speed surged. The lights on the rack strobed like a pulse. Maya dove beneath tracing cords with her flashlight. They rigged it to wipe if unauthorized access is detected. We need to cut power before the sequence completes. Wide-eyed but steady, Zoe shoved her phone into Maya's free hand. Live stream it. If it erases, at least the world sees them destroy it. Maya propped the phone against a pipe lens aimed at the screen. Then she spotted a metal box labeled UPS strapped under the rack. Even if we kill the central power, the battery keeps it alive. Then kill the battery, James said. Her fingers tightened around the insulated pliers Henrik carried for emergencies. She yanked the cover. Blue sparks spat as she tore the connector free. The timer skipped 0402, 0359, then kept going. Not enough. Henrik shouted. The system's redundant. Maya crawled deeper, grit grinding under her knees. A second UPS slimmer was taped to the rack. She ripped it loose, adrenaline giving her strength she didn't know she had. The timer wavered. 0230, 0229. Copy running at 40%, Henrik said. Sweat darkened his collar. Buy more time, James urged. His fists were clenched knuckles white as if sheer will could hold back the clock. Maya's hand found the last cable, a thick black snake feeding directly from the breaker. This one kills everything. Do it, James said. She gritted her teeth and yanked. The screen went black. The hum of fans collapsed into silence. The warehouse plunged into stillness. Henrik's laptop chirped once like a heartbeat returning. We saved it, he said, staring at the progress bar frozen on his screen. 97% copied. Ledger black and contractor gateway, both intact. Maya slumped against the rack, chest heaving. Sparks still fizzed at the cut wire. James crouched beside her, one hand on her arm. You okay? I'm fine. Her voice was steady, though her pulse thundered. Angry, but fine. He let out a breath, then pulled the tie from his collar. Her wrist was bleeding where the cable had nicked her. He wrapped it, fingers brushing skin, with a gentleness at odds with the sharp command still in his tone minutes earlier. You always ruin your ties around me, she said. Worth it, he answered soft enough that only she heard. Zoe killed the live stream and pocketed her phone. The viewers saw the countdown, the sparks, the blackout. If anyone tries to spin this as your stunt, I'll bury them with raw footage. Henrik slid a flash drive across the table. 2 copies. One for the press, one for Mueller. We locked the original in a bank vault by morning. The laptop screen flared again, a single message blinking across the console before it died entirely. Hello, Gardner. Next time we'll cut the roots. Maya's jaw tightened. She whispered, They're watching everything. By dawn, they were back on the rooftop. The lavender gleamed with water droplets trembling like mercury on the narrow leaves. The skyline had sharpened into steel and glass, the storm spent, but its memory hanging heavy. Henrik pinned a printed page of the ledger to the conference board they had dragged outside. Payment chain, he said, tapping the lines. Amaranth to Prescott. Prescott to Arcturus. Arcturus to subcontractors who ran sabotage ops. Names, James asked. Henrik pointed to initials scrawled in a margin. LP, Lauren Prescott. And here, R.E. Richard Ellison. Maya studied the ink, her stomach a knot. They signed their crimes like trophies. They never thought anyone would look, James said. His voice held no triumph, only resolve. The rooftop door opened. Zoe rushed out, phone raised. "It's already hitting the feeds," she said, an anonymous leak. Screenshots of the ledger but doctored. It shows you James approving transfers. The headline, Carter's secret payouts. James went still. "They moved faster than we did." "Not faster," Maya corrected. "Just louder." "But soil doesn't lie. We have the real ledger. With metadata. With proof." Henrik's phone vibrated. He read the message aloud. "Federal Oversight Committee. Emergency session. Tomorrow. They'll want explanations, and they'll want them on record." Zoe's hands shook as she tucked her phone away. "This is it. Either you bury them tomorrow or they bury you." James looked at Maya. The distance between them was only a breath, but it carried everything. Fear, defiance, the fragile trust they were still learning to hold. "We stand together?" he asked. Maya's eyes didn't waver. "Together. Always. Even if the ground shakes." The lavender bent in a sudden gust, the city alive with sirens again. The sun climbed pale and unsteady in the east, as if the day was bracing for what came next. The ledger sat between them, heavy as truth, fragile as paper, and the clock toward tomorrow's hearing had already begun to count down. The summons arrived before breakfast, and a letter with the government seal embossed in blue was hand-delivered to Carter Enterprises' lobby by a courier who refused to give a name. Inside the words were spare and cold. Emergency oversight session. 24 hours. Attendance required. James read it once then, twice his face an unreadable mask. "They've moved us to the stage," he said. "Not in weeks, not in days. Tomorrow." Maya stood by the window, looking down at the restless streets. Her hands were folded, but her voice was even. "Then we stop rehearsing. Tomorrow is the truth." Henrik sorted the copies of the ledger they had printed overnight, taping together timelines across the whiteboard. "We've mapped 32 transactions directly to Amaranth, Prescott, and Arcturus. That should be enough to break them." "Enough for suspicion," James corrected. "But suspicion isn't conviction. We need something louder." A knock cut through the tension. Zoe stepped inside, clutching her phone like it burned. "I got a call. Not from my source, from a private line. A senator. Wants to meet. Off the record. Tonight." James frowned. "Which senator?" She hesitated. "The one on the zoning committee. The one who pushed through Amaranth's parcels without public review." Henrik cursed under his breath. If he's reaching out, he's not trying to help. He's trying to measure the fire before it spreads. "Or he's scared," Maya said. "Scared people talk. Let's hear him." After closing, the meeting occurred in the marble silence of the old public library. Dust and history mingled in the air. The senator appeared between tall shelves of forgotten law books. Gray suit. Careful smile. Eyes like a man measuring exits. He said, "You're digging in the ground deeper than you know." His voice echoing faintly. "Amaranth isn't just a corporation. It's a corridor. Money moves through it, and people look the other way when it moves. I've looked the other way." James folded his arms. "Why meet us if you've profited from silence?" "Because silence is shifting," the senator said. "The ledger you found, it's real. But expose it, and you won't just cut Amaranth. You'll cut the state, the city, maybe the federal branches tied to these contracts." Maya's voice was sharp, stripped of patience. "You're telling us to quit because the truth is too big. I'm telling you the ground you're standing on is unstable," he said. "Step wrong, and it swallows you." He slipped an envelope onto the table and stepped back. "This isn't charity. It's survival. Take it or walk out blind." The envelope's flap was unsealed. Inside lay photocopies of contracts, signatures in familiar ink. Prescott Consulting, Arcturus Security, countersigned by city officials at improbable hours. They'll deny it, the senator said. But the timestamps match bank transfers. Use it if you dare. Just remember I didn't give it to you. And then he was gone, footsteps fading into the library's hollows. Back in the van, Henrik spread the copies under a lamp. He's right about one thing: the timestamps align with the ledger. It corroborates, not replaces. But if we stitch it together, it paints a map bigger than any company. Zoe leaned forward, her voice urgent. This is the weapon. You show the committee tomorrow that this isn't about Carter Enterprises, it's about an entire machine. James's jaw tightened, which means they'll strike harder before dawn. As if on cue, Maya's phone buzzed. Same anonymous number. A single sentence: lab blackout tonight. They'll erase the samples. Guard them. Her breath caught. They're going after the soil jars. Henrik swore. If those vanish, they'll claim you never had proof. The ledger will look like a theater. James stood, resolve sharp in his eyes. Then we go to the lab. Now. The lab glowed sterile white against the dark sky, its glass facade reflecting streetlights like fire fragments. Inside, the night crew was thin. A few technicians in coats and headphones. Maya led them straight to the storage wing, where the coolers of soil sat behind locked cabinets. Her hand hovered over the padlock. Check the seals first. The red tape was intact. She exhaled in relief until Henrik crouched and pointed to the hinge. Fresh scratches. Someone swapped screws. James's voice dropped. They're already inside. Suddenly, the alarms blared, a high-pitched whale sprinkler spitting smoke-scented mist. A recorded voice repeated, and a fire hazard was detected. Please evacuate. Technicians scattered, clutching laptops. In the chaos, a maintenance crew rolled in with a cart labeled ventilation unit. But the hoses snaked the wrong direction into the storage corridor instead of out. They're not here to fix anything, Zoe whispered. Maya didn't hesitate. She sprinted to the cooler, scanning barcodes, pulling duplicates into an emergency case. One of the men reached for her arm. James intercepted, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting until the cutting tool clattered to the floor. Henrik yanked the fire alarm's manual override. Smoke system's fake. They're using it as cover. The intruders bolted, abandoning the cart. One turned at the last second, cap pulled low. The posture, the tilt of the shoulder was all too familiar. Colt, Henrik hissed, Arcturus field lead. The man smirked before disappearing into the smoke. They emerged, coughing, onto the street, the case of soil jars clutched in Maya's hands. Fire trucks barreled down the block, sirens echoing. Reporters' cameras followed the chaos, lenses glinting. James steadied Maya with a hand on her back. You saved them. We saved ourselves, she said, her voice hoarse but firm. Henrik lifted the abandoned cutting tool from his pocket, bagged in evidence plastic. The logo stamped on the handle was unmistakable: Arcturus. Zoe exhaled. We take this to the committee tomorrow. Show them the sabotage isn't a rumor, it's documented. Arcturus, Prescott, and Amaranth are all chained together. James looked at the glowing skyline, jaw set. Then tomorrow the storm breaks. Either they fall, or we do. Maya's fingers tightened on the case of soil jars. The earth inside held memory, contamination, betrayal, resilience. Tomorrow, it would speak louder than any spectacle. The night air trembled with sirens, but beneath it she could hear the soil's steady whisper. Hold fast. The roots run deeper than fire. By dawn, the streets around the lab still smelled faintly of smoke. Firefighters had declared the incident a false alarm, but everyone in the group knew better. Arcturus had tested their defenses and nearly won. The soil jars rested on the conference table inside Carter Enterprises' glass tower, condensation fogging the cooler lids. Maya had lined them up like sentinels, each label clear, each barcode crisp. She had double-signed the chain of custody forms with fresh ink, pressing hard enough that the paper almost tore. "These jars are more than dirt," she said, their testimony. And testimony needs witnesses. Henrik checked the clock on the wall. The committee convenes in less than 6 hours. We'll get 20 minutes on record before they try to redirect. We need everything prepared: ledger, contracts, jars, and sabotage evidence. James nodded. His voice was steady, but his hand lingered on the soil cooler, as if it anchored him. Then we give them no excuse to doubt. Full transparency. Zoe paced near the window phone pressed to her ear. My source just confirmed that Arcturus has men stationed near the committee building. They'll try to discredit the jars if they can't destroy them. Expect a staged scandal before noon. Then we stay ahead, James said. Whatever they throw, we answer with proof. By mid-morning, they returned to the lab to finish cataloging. The director had insisted that the jars would be dismissed as props without physical verification. Reluctantly, James agreed. The team carried the coolers into the sterile white hall tension, heavy as steel. Maya bent over the first cooler, scanning barcodes, cross-checking timestamps. The hum of refrigeration filled the silence. Seals intact, she said. Henrik logged the entry, fingers flying across the laptop keys. Then a faint hiss. Maya froze. Do you hear that? A vent overhead exhaled a pale mist. At first it looked like condensation from the cooling system, harmless. But her nose caught it, sharp chemical wrong. Gas, she shouted. Seal the jars. Henrik slammed the cooler shut. James yanked his jacket over Maya's shoulders and pulled her toward the exit. The mist thickened, rolling across the tile like a ghost. From the far end of the corridor, 3 figures appeared in maintenance gear, masks covering their faces. One held a cylinder sprayer, and the others were gloved with cutting tools. Their target was obvious: the storage cabinets. James moved without hesitation. He barreled into the first man, driving him against the wall. The sprayer clattered, releasing a jet of hiss that burned the linoleum. Maya kicked it away before it burst. The second intruder lunged for the cooler. Maya intercepted, slamming the lid and locking it with her whole weight. Not today, she hissed. The third swung the cutting tool toward Henrik. For a moment, fear flickered across his face, but then he ducked, grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, and slammed it into the attacker's side. The man crumpled with a grunt. The mist spread faster now, setting off alarms. Strobes pulsed red. An automated voice blared, "Evacuate immediately." Zoe's voice cut through the chaos from the doorway. Cameras are live. The whole thing is streaming to the press. The intruders froze. Their cover was gone. One ripped off his mask and cursed, eyes darting for an escape. In that flash of exposure, Maya saw the same asymmetrical shoulder tilt, the same gait she'd tracked from footage. "Colt," she whispered. He glared at her, then bolted down the side hall. His 2 men followed, vanishing into smoke and sirens. Fire crews stormed the lab minutes later, dragging hoses and barking orders. The group staggered into the street, coughing, the soil cooler still sealed between them. Zoe said, "You just turned the committee into a battlefield." Her chest heaving. Every network in the city saw Arcturus's sabotage evidence in real time. James wiped soot from his jaw. Then they can't bury it as a rumor anymore. It's spectacle against spectacle, and this time they exposed themselves. Henrik opened the cooler slightly and checked the temperature gauge. The jars sat undisturbed, condensation clinging, but seals unbroken. He shut it again with reverence. Still alive. Maya's hands shook from adrenaline. James steadied them with his own, pressing her fingers closed around the latch. "We carry this in together," he said. She nodded. Together. The committee chamber smelled of wood polish and old microphones. Rows of seats rose like a theater, packed with reporters and aides whispering into phones. At the long mahogany table, the oversight committee waited, eyes sharp, expressions carved from suspicion. Chairman Donnelly cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter. Ms. Johnson." You've been accused of misrepresenting, falsifying, and concealing hazardous conditions. What do you bring us today? James stood first, his voice steady, commanding. We bring evidence. Proof of sabotage. Proof of contamination. Proof of systemic fraud. He gestured toward Henrik, who rolled the cooler forward and placed it on the witness table. Maya followed. She spoke without notes, her words deliberate. These jars were pulled from parcels Amaranth claimed were safe. Independent lab tests found benzene, lead, and volatile organics above residential thresholds. We secured duplicates, documented every step, and protected them through 2 sabotage attempts. One last night, another this morning. If the soil could speak, it would say one thing: you've been lied to. A low murmur swept through the chamber. Cameras clicked. Henrik projected the ledger onto the screen. Payment chains, contracts, signatures. Page after page scrolled, each line was a nail in Amaranth's coffin. From the press gallery, Zoe typed furiously, her feed already trending. The chairman raised a hand. These are serious claims. Do you assert sabotage by specific parties? James didn't flinch. Amaranth, Urban Holdings, Prescott Consulting, Arcturus Risk and Security, and their enablers in government who looked away. Gasps rippled. Reporters leapt to their feet. Maya placed her hand on the cooler. Her voice cut through the noise. This soil doesn't lie. The ledger doesn't lie. You can bury people under headlines. You can set fires and gas labs. But you can't erase what the ground remembers. The room fell silent. Even the chairman leaned forward, eyes narrow as if hearing the ground whisper through her words. Thunder rolled across the city outside the chamber, though the sky was clear. Lauren Prescott watched the broadcast from a penthouse suite, her smile thin, her glass of wine untouched. Richard Ellison stood beside her, jaw tight. They've turned the soil into scripture, he said. Lauren swirled, her glass eyes cold. Then we burn the scripture. Time for the next move. Her phone buzzed. A message glowed. Operation B begins at dusk. She raised her glass at the skyline. Let them preach. Tomorrow they'll have no altar. Back in the chamber, Maya and James exchanged a glance across the cooler of soil. Both of them knew the committee wasn't the end. It was only the opening act. The real war was still coming, and the city was the battlefield. The committee hearing adjourned in chaos, reporters chasing sound bites down the marble halls, cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. James and Maya slipped out a side exit with Henrik and Zoe, the soil cooler between them like a fragile heart. Henrik muttered, "We bought time but did not trust it. Half the committee looked ready to indict you, the other half prepared to crown you. Either way, they'll stall." "They won't stall long," James said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were flinty. "Prescott won't let this sit. She's planning her next strike." Maya held the cooler close. "Then we plan faster." That evening, Carter Enterprises' rooftop became their war room again. Rain threatened in the distance, low thunder rolling off the river. The lavender bent with the wind as Henrik projected the ledger across a portable screen. "Every time we go public, they escalate," he said. "Fires, forged emails, sabotage at the lab. They're trying to wear us down until we collapse under the noise. They call it Operation B," Zoe said, scrolling her phone. "I intercepted a thread on an encrypted forum anonymous handles, but the timing matches Prescott's people. They're planning something big. B could stand for blackout breach bomb. No one knows." James's shoulders tensed. "What's the target?" "Not clear," Zoe said. But they kept repeating the phrase, "cut the roots." Maya's gaze drifted to the lavender beds swaying under the storm winds. She whispered, "The roots are more than metaphor. They're coming here." At midnight, The first sign arrived. The rooftop lights flickered, then died. The city below glowed as usual, but its tower stood dark, a single blind spot in the skyline. "Power cut," Henrik said, scrambling for his laptop. "Backups should have kicked in. They've jammed the system." James answered. He moved toward the stairwell door, pulling a flashlight from the wall box. "Everyone stay sharp." Maya crouched near the manifold. A faint metallic tang lingered in the air. She touched the valve fingers, coming away damp. They primed the lines. "What kind of priming?" Zoe asked. "Accelerant," Maya said grimly. "If they light it, this garden burns." As if summoned by her words, a shadow appeared at the far end of the rooftop. A man in dark clothes, face hidden under a hood, knelt by the irrigation junction. His hand struck a lighter, once, twice. "Stop!" James's voice cracked across the rooftop. He surged forward, tackling the figure before the flame caught. The lighter skittered across the tiles. Another shadow moved in from the stairwell. Then another from the elevator shaft. 3 in total. Silent, efficient, practiced. Arcturus had come in person. The rooftop became a battlefield. James wrestled with the first intruder, fists and knees, striking hard against the tiles. Henrik swung a steel pipe, clumsy but desperate, blocking another from reaching the cooler. Zoe darted behind the screen live stream, already running. Her instinct was always to make witnesses of the world. Maya faced the third. He lunged for the manifold, wrench in hand. She intercepted, shoving him back into the lavender bed. The stalks snapped, releasing their sharp fragrance. He sneered, driving the wrench downward. She rolled aside, grabbed a broken length of cedar trellis, and jabbed it against his ribs. The man staggered, breath wheezing. Sirens rose in the distance. Someone below had seen the blackout and called emergency services. The intruders realized time was short. One shouted abort and threw a flare toward the manifold. Maya dove. She caught it before it landed, the heat searing her palms even through gloves. With a grunt, she hurled it over the parapet, where it arced into the night and fizzled against rain. James pinned his attacker with brute force, pressing his knee into the man's back. "Who sent you?" The man only laughed, bitter and low. "The ground's already poisoned. You can't clean rot." Footsteps thundered on the stairwell. Security finally burst through, weapons drawn. But the intruders had prepared smoke grenades, hissed, cloaking them in choking gray. When the air cleared, the rooftop was empty, except for broken trellises, trampled lavender, and one flare burn scorched into the tiles. Later, the group sat shaken but unbroken in the conference room below. The cooler of soil jars rested in the center of the table. Henrik rubbed his temples. "They almost turned your rooftop into another fire headline." Operation B wasn't a blackout. It was a blaze. "They won't stop with fire," James said. He pulled off his jacket, sweat and soot streaking his shirt. "Next time it'll be something louder. Something that makes even the soil look like a sideshow." Zoe tapped her screen, showing the live stream replay. "Millions watched them try to torch your roof. Arcturus can't spin this as a rumor. They've been caught, masks and all." "They'll adapt," Maya said quietly. Her burned gloves sat on the table, charred black at the fingertips. "They'll constantly adapt, but so will we." James looked at her, the weight of exhaustion in his eyes, softened by something else, admiration raw and unguarded. "You caught fire in your hands tonight," he said, "and threw it back," Maya replied. For a long moment, the storm outside was their only witness. By morning, headlines screamed across the city. Carter Enterprises rooftop attacked. Sabotage confirmed. Some outlets framed James as a victim, others as an instigator, but all carried the duplicate grainy footage. Masked intruders, flares, smoke. The committee had no choice but to reconvene. A second session was scheduled 2 days later, public televised and open to the city. Henrik spread maps across the table. If we go in again, we go in with everything. Ledger soil contracts, sabotage footage. No more fragments. One story, airtight. Maya touched the cooler gently. And the soil goes with us. No substitutes, no proxies. They'll try to destroy it again, but it's not real if it's not in the room. James placed his hand beside hers. Then we carry it in ourselves. Their eyes met. For once, the silence between them wasn't tension, it was promise. Across the city, in a high tower suite, Lauren Prescott watched the rooftop footage on repeat. Richard Ellison paced beside her, furious. "They should have burned," he said. "This was supposed to end it." Lauren sipped her wine, calm, calculating. "No. This only raises the stakes. Operation B failed time for Operation C." Richard stopped pacing. "C." Her smile was cold. "Collapse. If the soil won't break them, we collapse the city under their feet." Outside the tower windows, Manhattan glowed restless, unaware that its roots were about to be shaken again. The city awoke unsettled. Subways ran taxis, honked, markets opened, but a tension buzzed beneath the surface, like wires humming before they spark. News anchors replayed the rooftop footage every hour, masked men with flares, smoke choking the lavender beds, the rooftop garden nearly consumed by fire. Some called James a visionary under siege. Others accused him of staging chaos for sympathy. Inside Carter Enterprises, the group gathered around a table littered with headlines, maps, and half-empty coffee cups. The soil cooler sat at the center again, its condensation glistening under fluorescent light. Henrik traced his finger across a city zoning map. "I've been analyzing the ledger against infrastructure blueprints. Operation C isn't about one site. It's about to collapse. They've been funneling contracts through Amaranth to firms that cut corners on structural integrity. Bridges, subway tunnels, retaining walls, any of them could fail." James leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Collapse the city to bury us in rubble." "Literally." Zoe scrolled through her messages. "Despite missing signatures, I've been tipped about inspections flagged as satisfactory. If one of those structures fails, they'll pin it on you, say your project drew funds and attention away from maintenance. They're turning public safety into a weapon," Maya said. Her voice was low, steady, but her eyes burned. "We have to get ahead of it. Not just defend ourselves. Expose the risk before they create a catastrophe." James nodded. "So, where do we strike first?" Henrik pointed to a section of the East River map. Pier 47. According to the ledger, Prescott Consulting approved millions for reinforcement. But the contractor who did the work is a shell. No equipment, no payroll. One heavy storm could tear the pier loose if the pilings are hollow. That night, they went to the pier themselves. The air smelled of brine and rust gulls, circling overhead in restless arcs. The wooden planks groaned beneath their steps. Zoe set her phone to record. "If we find proof, I'll stream it before anyone can spin it." Henrik knelt by the edge, lowering a probe into the water. He muttered numbers under his breath. "Steel densities off. Too thin." James frowned. How thin enough that a hurricane would chew through it? Maya crouched beside him, tracing the seams of the corroded beams with her gloved hands. This wasn't reinforcement. This was camouflage. They painted over decay and called it new. Suddenly a spotlight flared from the pier's far end. Voices barked orders. Men in security uniforms advanced radios crackling. Unauthorized presence. "Step away from the structure." James's voice was firm. "We're documenting evidence. This pier is unsafe." The lead guard sneered. "Evidence belongs to the city, not you. Hand over the equipment," Zoe whispered. "They're not city guards. Look at the patch, Arcturus." Before the guards could close in, a storm gust rattled the pier. One of the corroded beams groaned, shuddering under the weight. Maya's eyes widened. "It's failing now." "Back," James shouted. He grabbed Zoe's arm, pulling her towards solid ground. Henrik yanked the probe free. Maya lingered, filming the beam as it bent under pressure metal, screeching like an animal in pain. The footage captured everything, the weakness, the lie. With a deafening crack, part of the railing gave way, plunging into the river. Spray drenched them as the Arcturus men stumbled back, shouting into radios. Maya ran the last steps, breath sharp in her chest. "Got it!" she gasped, clutching her phone. "Collapse on camera." Their work failed under its own weight. By dawn, the footage had spread across every major outlet. Headline after headline: PR near collapse, sabotage, fears confirmed. The committee had no choice but to accelerate. The second public session already planned was moved to that very evening. The city demanded answers, and the soil jars alone would no longer suffice. In the war room, Henrik laid out the strategy. "We bring the ledger, the jars, the pier footage, but most importantly, we get the community. If the people stand with us, the committee can't silence it." James looked at Maya. "Will they stand with us?" She thought of Tasha, the boy with the phone, and neighbors who had whispered fears of rashes and puddles that smelled like tires. If we ask them, yes, because they've been waiting for someone to ask. The session hall overflowed with bodies, reporters, citizens, even construction workers still in orange vests. The cooler of soil stood at the witness table again, a symbol now recognized across the city. Chairman Donnelly banged his gavel. "Order. This hearing will address allegations of fraud, sabotage, and endangerment of public safety tied to Amaranth Urban Holdings and its affiliates." Lauren Prescott sat in the front row, draped in crimson silk, her expression sculpted into calm disdain. Richard Ellison lounged beside her, every inch the smirking tactician. James began, voice measured but strong. "This is not about me. It's about a city poisoned and collapsing under lies." He gestured toward Maya. "She'll show you the truth." Maya stepped forward. She held up a soil jar, its label facing the cameras. "This earth carries memory. It remembers chemicals leaching where children play. And last night, another structure remembered neglect. Pier 47, nearly collapsing under a storm that hasn't yet come." She lifted her phone, projecting the footage onto the screen. Gasps filled the chamber. The video showed the beam bending the metal, screaming, and the railing plunging into the river. This wasn't weather. This was fraud disguised as safety. "And we have the ledger that proves who signed it." Henrik scrolled through the pages on the projector. Amaranth transfers, Prescott signatures, and Arcturus payouts. The chain was undeniable. The chairman's gavel cracked again, struggling to contain the uproar. Silence. Silence. Lauren finally rose, her voice velvet over steel. "These theatrics do not change facts. Carter Enterprises is failing, and these so-called crusaders are dragging the city down. Fraud lies. You speak of collapse while standing on the ruins of your own credibility." James's eyes locked on hers. "You built those ruins, Lauren, and now the city sees the foundation." The crowd erupted cheers, boos, shouts, overlapping into a storm of voices. Reporters shoved microphones forward. Security scrambled to contain the surge. In the chaos, Maya whispered to James, "We turned the tide." But Henrik, watching Lauren's composed smile, shook his head. "No, she's waiting. Operation C isn't over." That night, the city pulsed with unrest. Protesters gathered near Carter Enterprises, some chanting in support, others waving signs accusing James of spectacle. Sirens wove through the streets, restless. In a high-rise suite, Lauren raised her glass. The pier was only the beginning. Tomorrow we will show them a real collapse. Richard's grin was sharp as glass. And this time, no cameras will save them. Below, the city lights glittered across the river, beautiful, fragile, unaware of the ground shifting beneath its feet. The night before the storm felt almost calm, too calm. Manhattan's skyline shimmered like cut glass, every tower pretending innocence, every bridge a silver thread stretched thin. But beneath, currents shifted. Inside Carter Enterprises, the war room buzzed with tension. Soil jars lined the table like silent jurors. The ledger printouts were taped across the walls, pages overlapping into a paper fortress. Henrik's laptop projected new overlays, maps, contracts, inspection failures, until the screen was crowded with red warnings. James stood at the window, his reflection fractured by raindrops beginning to spatter the glass. Lauren's not finished. She never is. If Operation C collapses, she'll strike a symbol which the whole city watches. Henrik zoomed in on the overlays. She has three options: Midtown Subway Hub, East River Bridge, or the power grid at Roosevelt Yard. If she destabilizes one, the ripple will paint Carter Enterprises as a distraction, incompetence, or liability. Maya pressed her palms on the table. We can't guard every corner. We need to predict the one she can't resist. Zoe raised her phone. My source just texted a phrase, "Underground sings tonight." That's subway, not bridge. James turned sharply. Midtown Hub. Henrik nodded grimly. If they hit there, 500,000 commuters are at risk, and the city will blame whoever's face is already plastered across scandal headlines, yours. They reached the station just past midnight. The tunnels smelled of steel and oil, the last train's already gone. Fluorescent lights buzzed weakly overhead, casting long shadows across empty platforms. Maya crouched near a support column, running her gloved hand along its base. New concrete, but the texture's wrong. Too smooth, too rushed. Henrik set up a ground-penetrating scanner. The display flickered, showing hollow pockets where solid fill should have been. They left cavities. With enough stress, the columns buckle. Or with a charge, James said. His voice was low, dangerous. They don't need time, just a spark. From the far tunnel, the echo of footsteps. Not commuters. Heavy boots, deliberate. 3 figures emerged, black-clad, carrying cases marked with a familiar logo, Arcturus, Risk and Security. Colt led them, his slanted shoulder unmistakable. His smirk echoed against the tiles. You never learn. Roots can't hold in stone. James stepped forward, every line of his body coiled. Stone cracks. Soil endures. The fight erupted before words could sharpen further. The intruders split. One bolted toward the columns, another toward the power junction. Maya intercepted, slamming her shoulder into the second intruder before he could plant his case. They crashed to the ground, the impact rattling her bones, but she held on, wrenching the detonator free. Henrik swung a metal rod at the third, sparks flying as it clanged against the case. Zoe filmed everything, her voice tight, as she narrated. Proof live: Arcturus planting charges underground. Colt lunged at James' knife, flashing under the harsh lights. James caught his wrist, twisting hard, metal clattering to the tiles. The two men grappled, fists cracking against ribs, grunts echoing like war drums. Maya rolled, pinning her opponent with leverage from the trellis tricks she'd learned in the garden. Soil remembers, she hissed, wrenching the detonator wires loose. Henrik's scanner beeped wildly. Charge active in column C. James broke free of Colt, sprinting with Henrik toward the case, blinking red against the base of the column. The timer flashed, 00:58. Can we disarm it? James barked. Henrik's fingers shook, not with certainty. Then don't. James heaved the case upward, muscles straining, and hurled it into the maintenance tunnel's sump pit. Water surged, sparks crackled, and the timer drowned with a hiss. Silence. Then the faint groan of stressed steel eased, as if the station exhaled. Colt was gone when the smoke cleared his laughter trailing down the tunnel. Police sirens wailed above ground, growing closer. Zoe lowered her phone, the live stream ending. Half the city saw this. They can't twist it anymore. Arcturus tried to collapse the station and we stopped it. James leaned against a column, chest heaving. No, we delayed it. Lauren will strike again. Maya placed a steady hand on his arm. But not tonight. Tonight, the soil held. By morning, the footage dominated headlines. Sabotage in subway Carter team foils attack. The narrative had shifted. For the first time, the city saw James and Maya not as architects of scandal, but as defenders. The Oversight Committee convened an emergency session, this time in front of national cameras. Soil jars lined the table, pier footage, rolled subway sabotage, streamed live. Henrik presented the ledger, Zoe delivered community testimony. Maya spoke of the soil's memory, and James' voice, steel gaze, unwavering, declared that transparency was their only shield. Lauren and Richard were absent. Warrant notices appeared in their place. The city buzzed, restless but alive. Protest signs turned supportive. Neighbors who once whispered now shouted in defense. The ground had shifted again, this time in their favor. That night on the rooftop, the lavender swayed in clean air. For the first time in weeks, no smoke clung to its stalks. James leaned on the railing. We're not finished. The rot runs deeper. Maya stood beside him, the skyline glittering in her eyes. Then we keep digging. Together. Henrik appeared with coffee, Zoe with her phone, and Zoe was already typing the following headline. For once their faces carried something rare: hope. Below, the city roared with sirens' laughter and the stubborn pulse of life. Above, clouds parted, stars glinting through. And in that fragile quiet, James and Maya knew the war wasn't over, but they had won the ground for now. And that's where we leave them for this season, standing on the rooftop. Lavender swaying the city, still trembling, but alive. Two voices turning scandal into strength. What do you think? Has James finally redeemed himself? Or is the shadow of Lauren still waiting to strike? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose side would you be on if the soil remembered your secrets? If you've been rooting for James and Maya to keep fighting, hit that like button so they know you're with them. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next chapter of this story will dig even deeper, and you won't want to miss when the ground shakes again.